All the italic underline. Give it a moment, it could shine. But then it would be a measure so drastic. How can you hate a font that's so fantastic?
We are recording today with Loom. Loom has been approved by IT. I like Loom because see this circle right here? See if I can get it just right. I like that I can have a circle and I can actually move it around my screen. But if I move it, it's going to kick me out of my presentation. So I'm not going to touch it right now. I made that mistake in session 1. The link is there. All right. So it's loom.com. Welcome to Make It Pretty, Graphic Design 101 for Teachers, Session 2. We're going to be running until 10 a.m. What are my goals for you guys? These are my main 3 goals. I want to increase your visual understanding. And by visual understanding, I mean removing confusing elements so that you can make your visuals seamless. All right. And like highly laser focused on kind of taking all of your information and making it very easy to digest visually. Now, number 2, I want to increase your confidence in your design choices. What's really cool about all the rules to design, once you know a rule, you see it everywhere. And once you know a rule, you can break it with intention. And number 3, I hope to increase the students' access to knowledge through 1 and 2. Now, one thing you have to be aware of is I love graphic design. And so I might talk really fast and get really passionate about this. So if I start to get like really loud and really fast, seriously, guys, like speak up and be like, Rachel, slow down. So I actually surveyed all my students, and this is what they told me about how this presentation can help you guys the best. These are the top 6. Okay. 1, no colors that are bright over each other. The biggest horrendous colors, we talk about pinks, yellows, and greens over other colors. 2, slower through the presentations. Chromebooks have a lag, and generally you have to account for that. So sometimes it's pace yourself and give them time for their Chromebooks to catch up. 3, please do not have large blocks of text, especially, with white and black contrast. It's really hard to read when they're small. 4, they would request fonts you can read and links you can find. 5, please use bigger fonts. One thing you'll realize, a lot of your kids are on their phones when they're on your presentations. And not only is it small, but the orientation doesn't always, jump towards landscape, and it will even be a smaller square in the vertical presentation. So use bigger fonts. And number 6, please more pictures, but Bitmoji in moderation. I love Bitmoji, but I understand what they mean because when you get excited about stuff, you use it a lot. Here we go. We're going to talk about 3 main categories today. There is type, typography, the words themselves, color, which is my favorite, so it's smack dab in the middle, and layout, which is like hierarchy and tips and tricks to kind of get things to kind of flow right. Those are the 3 things we're going to go over. This is your trifecta. This is your golden triangle. These are your 3 points of power. Okay? This is your power of tower right here. We're going to start with typography. All right, guys, we are going to do what is known as text cascade and also go over some of the cool things that I figured out work really well. So a text cascade is this. We go over to the chat box and we all answer the same question at a time. Think of a font and type it. All right. I want everybody, I'm going to count down probably from 5. Think of a font, type it in the chat box, and we're all going to hit enter at the same time. Going with Calibrate. All right, guys, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, text cascade. So you guys give me some fonts. Cambria, Arial, Garamond. Oh, these are all very good fonts. Very legible. I like this. Comic Sans in moderation. All right. That's called the text cascade. Give everyone another 5 seconds if they're looking for the text box. When we get to polls, by the way, polls are going to be by the cool little the shapes area on the far right. So in your mind, remember, that's coming up soon. All right, here we go. The classic toolkit. Classic emphasis options. The traditional toolkit to emphasize something in text is as follows. Bold, italic, underline. And no one says you can't triple up and use all 3 at the same time. Now, bold is your strong emphasis. Italic is your weak emphasis. And we live in a world that is the internet, basically. So generally reserve your underlines to denote links. Yes, I underline stuff all the time, but I usually double it up in a very obvious way. But if you can kind of rely on underline for links, that doesn't leave any ambiguity. And one of the biggest things you'll find is if you can iron out ambiguity, you will have less questions. The traditional toolkit, bold, italic, and underline. Now, here's the thing about bold, italic, and underline. Bold, italic, and underline will get you through most typography emphasis challenges. And there are shortcuts. If you are typing and you're in the middle of a sentence and then you have to go and find the little button for bold, it's really annoying and breaks up your flow. You can Control B for bold, Control I for italic, Control U for underline. Sometimes that will save you that little teeny tiny bit of mental juice that you need because we're remaking everything for remote right now. So shortcuts are very handy. I'd love to show you guys how if you hold Shift, you can move things over by 1 pixel, but we'll see if we get to it. But anyone here who's in Google Classroom is like, but Rachel, Google Classroom doesn't let you use bold, italic, and underline. I know. And I have feedback messaged them probably multiple times requesting this because I think it's completely, there's a lot of English teachers who are going to be like, I really, really need to use bold, italic, and underline to follow the rules of actual grammar. But we still have the following. You can use in Google Classroom, you can still use caps for headers. You can still use line breaks to kind of create white space to break up chunks of text. And strangely enough, we don't have bold, italic, and underline, but we do have the emoji keyboard and the Unicode keyboard. So Unicode, I always thought was ASCII, but basically it's this. So the Unicode special characters, right? Those hearts and stars, all those ones that you can type up if you know how to get to them, anyone taking Spanish, the little tilde. You have those in Google Classroom and you can use them to make texture rows to break up chunks of text. And also in Google Classroom, in the assignment box, if you do the right click, unless of course your mouse is set up to the left side, then it's a left click. The right click will give you an emoji symbol keyboard. And so you can insert special characters and you don't have bold, italic, and underline yet, but you do have those. And that is very useful because it gives you little visual things to try to create structure. You can liven up your look. And hopefully they will prioritize bold, italic, and underline sometime soon. All right, guys, we're going to do a poll. And here's how polls work. And polls will kind of show up in the little icon thing if they don't pop up immediately. And I'm going to ask you guys a very simple question. Are you on your phone or are you on a monitor? I'm going to launch this. And all right, let's see what we got. So far, we got some people on their monitors, which means I built this on a monitor and a monitor reflects kind of the right sizes. But let's see if anyone's on their phone. All right, I'm going to end that poll. All right, we got a bunch of people on their monitors, but realize a lot of your students, if you're remote teaching, they're totally on their phones, okay? Font sizes. So when we were in high school, all our papers, we submitted in size 12 fonts, right? But small fonts are illegible. They distract and they're confusing. So if you look at these 3 different font sizes, size 12, size 24, and size 36, here's my question for you guys. Which size do you like? I'm going to ask you guys another poll. So I'm going to launch this poll and you should be able to see the results. And I want to ask you guys, do you like size 12 to read? Do you like size 24 or do you like 36? For you, what's the most comfortable size? And you'll know, strangely enough, some people still like 12 because they got really good eyesight. We got a lot of people on 24 and 36. And 36 is a pretty big size font. All right, so the majority of people like 24, but we got a good amount of people who like the 36. Font sizes. Ready for it? 2 small fonts are bad. Now, size 18. Now, when I was in college, they always told us, don't go below size 18 for presentations. 18 is your size you work with. This is what size 18 looks like in Calibri. Right? It's also 18 in Comic Sans. By the way, I'm totally using Comic Sans in all of my conversational word bubbles. And I think it's totally acceptable. But nowadays, because everyone's on their phones, I'm totally using size 22, and sometimes I go up to 30. My headers, they're up in the 40s. But it's because we're working on smaller and smaller devices. All right, this is important. Please limit the amount of fonts. So if you have, fonts are really fun, and I don't want you to be afraid of them, right? But too many fonts can be distracting and confusing. Now, the Goldilocks zones of fonts is 3. You want to have 3 fonts, all right? And once you've kind of decided what your fonts are and you stick to them, okay? But in your head, say, I have categories, all right? I'm going to have these three fonts. I have Impact, Calibri, and Comic Sans. All right. Those are the three fonts. I actually use Arial a lot in this too, especially on the polls pages, but each font has a purpose. All right. So when you limit your amount of fonts, you're going for consistency and readability. And these are the keys to good design. So these fonts that I have right here, all right, Impact is my header. It's my titles, always. And then when you see it, you know it's like loud in your face. This is important. And then when I have main body font, I always have the same font. It's reassuring. This is an easy to read font. This is information. This is important. And then I have my flair. My conversation font, Comic Sans, is my flair. That's me talking. Generally, it's probably not that important. And you can kind of mentally like say, this isn't the directions. Now, let's say you're doing a lesson on Edgar Allan Poe. You could find a really creepy font and use it as your flair. You could have your creepy font as your header font as long as you're consistent and it's big enough, okay? But purpose. All right, so here's the thing about personality. Fonts actually have personalities. Like when you have a font, you give it like an adjective, right? So you're gonna match your font to the mood of your project or the mood of your presentation or the mood of your assignment, all right? So think about the personality of your fonts and what do they evoke? Is it a friendly, a fancy, a serious, a silly, an antique, a distressed? And how does that reaffirm your project? Like I use these fonts and change them up depending on, am I doing something about graffiti? I'll use the distressed font. Am I doing something about Victorian England? I'll use an antique font. What it does is it gives you this like ambiance that reinforms and reinforces exactly what you're trying to portray. All right. Personalities, guys, adjectives. Now, fun fonts and moderation. I love fonts. So this is great vibes and it looks like a wedding font and it's very pretty and it's very swirly and it's gorgeous. And when it comes to wedding fonts, it's pretty darn legible. All right. And it's a Google font. It's a fabulous font, but it's not a font you use for a paragraph of text. I don't know about you guys, but if you ever gone to a wedding and you're driving and the entire directions are in a font swirlier than this and you can't for the life of you like read it while you're driving and then you have to like pull off to the side of the road and you're like, oh, I'm late for this because I can't figure out where I'm going. Yes, please, in that situation, do the following. Have your fancy main like font like for your titles and then have a reassuring information font that's legible. So Great Vibes can be used as a header, and I use Calibri for a main body font. Now, you want to keep the sophistication, and you want to keep the legibility, and you pair them up, and then you have purpose, you know? You look at it, and your brain is like, okay, I know what's going on, I have structure. And now if you compare the two, this is what you're doing when you're comparing. If you squint your eyes, right, you can still read the Cupcake Ipsum dummy text on the right, but the one on the left just turns into decorative stuff. When you have fonts that are decorative like that, they almost turn into illegibleness. When I worked in animation, we actually would do similar things because we weren't allowed to ever have words whatsoever because of translation things in TV. Because if they were going to play it in another country, they couldn't have it with, you know, standard English words. So what we would do is we would make swirly little lines. And when I squint my eyes, I just see the swirly little lines and I don't even think it's text. I mean, I know it is because I typed it. Well, pasted it in. All right, guys, wee bit of history. So if you guys have ever downloaded a font, you will see this sentence. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This is an English language pangram, which means it has every letter of the alphabet. Like there's a Z in there, there's an X in there, all the hard to use letters, they're there. There's a U, everything you need. Now, owing to its brevity and coherence, it is widely known as the display example for fonts. And it's kind of nice to see. You want to see what your handwriting would look like as a font? Write this sentence out and you'll get every letter of the alphabet, all right? And you can kind of think, hey, could my handwriting be a font? And that's a good way to see if you want to like turn it into a font. Fonts sometimes get a bad rap, all right? So Comic Sans and Papyrus are the ones that come to mind. These are lovely fonts. I'm telling you, in high school, I loved doing projects about Egypt because I could sneak in the Papyrus font. And I swear, the beginnings of the burgeoning designer that I was because I found Papyrus in high school. So I'm not gonna tear it down and I'm just gonna say, but use it in moderation. All right, guys, this is going to be the end of my type section. I have 1 minute of a Saturday Night Live video about Papyrus, and you'll see the movie Avatar used a font that was so similar that all my design friends were like, did you see that? Is that the Papyrus font? Like, I like to talk for 4 minutes and take a break, but here's the thing. I have so much I want to tell you about design. I have to squish it all in. So here we go. Here's your little break from me talking for a minute.
It happened again. I thought it was behind me, but the dreams came back. I was up all night. I can't eat. I can't sleep.
What's wrong?
It haunts me. Nothing.
Stephen, not this again.
I forgot about it for years, but then I remembered that Avatar, the giant international blockbuster, used the papyrus font as its logo.
Avatar, the movie from like 9 years ago?
Yeah, he just highlighted Avatar, he clicked the drop-down menu, and then he just randomly selected papyrus, like a thoughtless child just wandering by a garden, just yanking leaves along the way.
And so now you're worried about the sequels that are coming out?
They're making more?
Yes, I think I heard that one.
So they changed the artwork. They fixed it.
It looks similar.
I love it. I stopped it when he flips the table. I love that bit. Okay, guys, now we're into my favorite part, color. And you will notice in my room, I've had students paint my bulletin boards because I love color. There's the clouds. I love the clouds. I don't think I can rotate it without possibly unplugging everything to show you guys the space one, but that's a really good one too. All right, on to color. You ready? This is your third poll. This is the last poll I'm going to give you guys today. Which one is easier to read? This is a quote by Ralph Speck. He is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer at Jaguar and Land Rover. And here you go. If you think good design is expensive, you should look at the cost of bad design. Now, which is easier to read, blue or gray? And I'm going to open up the poll right now. Yep, definitely blue. Okay, and in the poll, yes, blue is easier to read. And good sense of design on the page. The problem is you have text over an image. All right, hard to read text. If you have texture and visual noise, it makes it hard to read text. And here's an image of, that's my drawer. Like I just snapped a picture of the busiest drawer I could find. And the busiest drawer I found in my room was my scissor drawer. If you put text over it, it's really hard to read. But there are some ways to solve this. All right. You can add a background fill color. Right? And in terms of layers, I've got image, and then I've got like a fill box, and then I have my text. Or you can tint the image, right? You can tint that right in Google Slides. If you do like a right click under format options, you can put in a drop shadow, and you can retouch images right there. You don't have to open things up in Photoshop. Okay, but you'll be like, but Rachel, memes have text, and I read those. Yes, memes do have text, and that is totally images with words. Smack dab on top. But they use Impact, which is a very bold font created in the 1960s. And the text is on the top and the bottom where the not important part. If I have text here and here, it's fine. This isn't important. This is the important part right here, my face. But let's say you really want to have your text over an image. This is what you can do. You can add a black outline. You can change the color and add a drop shadow, like that little heart right there, and give yourself some contrast. Ineffective color choices. These are the usual suspects. Don't put saturated colors on top of each other unless you're doing a project about Mountain Dew and it's about extreme color choices and it's intentional. All right. These colors are going to either be too bright and saturated or not saturated enough, like the word color in the middle. Now, here we go. You can desaturate your colors and use contrast, but you want to do it with intention. Both of these text boxes have the same background green, and it's a midway green, so I can go white and I can go black. It's fine. It's a soothing background kind of color, way more legible. But here is something I'm going to have to add to it. If you want to use white, please make it a little bigger. Now, whenever I'm like teaching painting, I'm always like kind of telling people, how do I explain this? White doesn't go as far. It like you always need more white paint and you need to make white bigger. So if you want to use your white fonts, which I love using white fonts, make them a little bigger. They need to breathe. Okay. You want white text? Make it bigger. Color. Now here is what I mean about emphasis. So here are two images. The bee in both of these, same layout, but the bee on the right is brighter because of a color change. But in the back of your head also realize people are colorblind, and don't be surprised if in your group of kids, you're always going to have someone who's somewhere in the color deficiency. They might not see oranges. They might not see purples. I usually have about 4 kids a year. Usually it's boys who can't see greens. All right. But blue is a good one. Blue is like the color that everyone can see. All right. Blues are normally a good, safe color to go with. But red is kind of a nice color for, it pops out really fast. And I'm going to show you what I mean about how you can use color to highlight words. Okay, great. Using these 2 samples, I used a Cupcake Ipsum as my dummy text on both of them, but I used a little bit of red to make you realize Cupcake will pop out. Use color like with intention. You can make things like really important with color and make things pop. All right, we're now on to the 3rd section. This is a hierarchy and layout tips. The third point of our trifecta. All right, hierarchy. Hierarchy means you're establishing a coherent and an obvious visual order. Now, on the left, that's a slide. That was our first slide that I had up when you popped in to the presentation. Now, you will notice I have a header, information of a thing to do, and my flair conversation text. And I have these rules, and if I consistently use them, it's like wearing the same thing every single day. People will remember you better. So says the Talking Heads CD from high school that I vaguely remember. It was like a quote. You wear the same thing every day, people remember you better. These, if you just keep using them, people kind of get into these routines of knowing what they mean. Here we are on the left. Now, this is what happens when you just throw everything into a Word doc. It defaults to usually Times New Roman, and you can kind of play with color and make your header bigger. And then the images tend to pop in the bottom, but you're not tied to that, especially in Google Slides. Google Docs is a little bit more sticky in terms of how things go, but in Google Slides, you can move things around however you want. I always like to have my images and my text at I think about a balance, because text is always more important than images. My images are about reinforcing my text, right? So if I was given this stuff to visually make pretty on the first page of a project, I would be like illustration, header, text, because you always want to have your header before your text. So you can have your categories, right? Your hierarchy, title, text, illustrations. That's like what happens when you drop it in, but you can move them around. Your illustrations can come at the top, your illustrations can come at the bottom, and you get to decide, and this is what's important, and when you establish a coherent and an obviously visual order, where are your images going and how do they read? So these are all sample examples of what you can do. They're all slightly different, but they're all pretty much the exact same thing, but they read differently. So here are some example layouts, and you place the images where you want them to be read in the text. In high school, I hated how my textbooks would have a big paragraph of text, and then they'd have an illustration in the middle of a sentence, and then go back to the text, and I never knew when I was supposed to read the images. Have a gap in terms of a paragraph, and wherever they read the images, you want them to not have to break the flow of their text. And this is what I mean. There are the 5 examples, but in terms of the flow, what is the order you want them to digest and to read? You're going on a journey. Every page has beginning, middle, and end, all right? And this is why. Always have one clear path across the page, all right? In the Western world, which is us, we start reading up here, and we go this way before we go down, just like comics. And we are trained. And generally, sometimes people start here and then they immediately go boop up to there. All right. So in terms of that, always have a flow. And if you have time, I know you guys are so busy, but I always try when I have time to do a quick flow through the presentation. And it's about ambiguity, because if you ever have a place where they could go in a different direction, oh, believe me, half of them will and half of them won't. All right. So here's a little bit of history, because you will notice this lorem ipsum keeps popping up, or Cupcake Ipsum. So the dummy text. So chances are you've seen lorem ipsum in your travels across the web. It often appears as a graphic design materials for WordPress and various mockups. Hold on, my battery's low. So that means I got unplugged. All right, good. I think I'm charged again. I kicked the cord. Something always goes wrong, but that's why I have a backup screen in case I get kicked out. So you've probably seen this on your travels across the internet. Here's what it is. In the 1500s, lorem ipsum was it got started using as this placeholder text. They just grab some random text. And this is when you don't have final copy. So designers use this when they're considering form without the meaning of the text influencing their design. Here's why. If you have ever used the real text and then they change it and then they change it and you don't notice because it's small things, you don't want to put in the right copy until you know that they've already proofed it. All right. Lorem ipsum is a corrupted version of the 1st century BC text by Cicero. The words are altered, added, removed. It's nonsensical, improper Latin, but we all use it. Okay. Avoid info dumps. Large paragraphs are hard to read. So keep like one idea to a slide or one idea to a page. If you have a giant, like 4-paragraph page for the kids to read when you're talking, it's too much information. And sometimes you can't even, don't go below 18 point now. Use 2 slides. Like just break it up. And if 2 is still busy, use 4. Then you have white space and you can add illustrations, and we love the illustrations. We love the pictures. I really wish, is Melissa Fontaine in this one? Melissa, I really want us to have more art history here, by the way. Oh my God, can we please have like art history? Yes. Believe me, I had 2 classes of art history in high school and it was the most enlightening thing ever. White space is really important, but white space is not empty. It boosts clarity. So this is going to remind you like a logo versus an abstract painting. If you have a logo, it feels like consistent. You know what they're going for. That is a clover made out of the hearts that are in my trifecta design right there. And the one on the right is an abstract painting that you have no idea. You can't even read clarity. You just can't. White space is important. And this is what I mean on an actual page. This is why we have margins. Now, there was a writer at some point who like wanted his pages to feel heavy and he didn't have margins and he had giant blocks of text, but that was intentional. And he got away with it. We want kids to be able to read our work. Please use white space. Please allow your text to breathe. This is a do as I say, not as I do, because you will probably have found I have pixelated images in here. Pixelated images are usually like I can fix later on if I can find a high-res version. But if your images are blurry, it means they're low-res. Try to find a high-res image. Backgrounds do not have to be white. So I have white up top, and I have this nice purple in the bottom, all right? Backgrounds can be white with a border, and then it breaks it up. That white is really hard on our eyes. Lines to be used for hierarchy, all right? This is 3 different sections of text, 3 different categories, but I put lines in, and then it gives it structure, okay? If you take it away, it kind of feels like this weird floating haiku of Christmas trees. Now, like I'm saying about lines, if you compare the 2, the one on the left kind of falls apart. The one on the right feels put together. They kind of remind you like, oh, this is a thing that's connected. All right, here we go. You ready for it? Please always proofread and then have like, read it 3 times, get someone else to read it. Thank goodness I have someone. I am worst with proofreading. And it doesn't matter how many times, like I'll be able to tell you if a line is 1/16 of an inch off, but I can't tell you that I'm missing a C in the word excellence down there. Keep it super simple. All right. Your design, if you want to be like, do your collage-y stuff, if it's not simple, it's usually confusing. All right. You kind of have to tell yourself, I am trying to tell you something very specific. Keep it simple. Busy isn't always a good idea when you're trying to kind of convey something specific. You guys might find yourselves in a situation where you're in Google Docs and you're like, why are there black boomerangs? Okay, just so you guys know, there are 2 image change options. The blue handles adjust proportional change. The black ones let you crop. All right, 1 click, blue handles. 2 clicks, black boomerang. If you are getting distortion like this, 2 things to try. Hold shift to see if that will stick it to like proportional, or get yourself out of the crop. Get yourself out of the crop menu. It means you're trying to move the blue handles when you're in the crop mode. Make links easy to find. You can make your image a link. You can take your link and make it bigger and take the words out. But kids are always like, where do I click? And I'm like, the big link. Make it easy for links to find. That's why we use underline for links and reinforce the idea that underline means links. Okay, here we go. I want you to do 5 minutes in breakout rooms. You guys are going to talk to each other about what you can change in a previous lesson or like what you can use going forward. How many people do we got? I like to have about 4 people in a breakout room. That looks pretty good. All right, it looks like we're gonna have 3 breakout rooms. I'm gonna try to open them up. We'll have the Comic Sans, the Calibris, and the Times New Romans. Guys, 5 minutes. Hey guys, welcome back. We're all gonna trickle in. By the way, if anyone's teaching remotely, I recommend getting a timer. It is the most useful thing ever. Trying to always use the Google timers is a pain in the butt, but having a timer is really awesome. All right, and now you guys get to have an exit ticket because you guys get the full experience. Here's your Jamboard, guys. So if you've never used a Jamboard before, I'm gonna post a link. If it will let me. All right, there we go. Hopefully this isn't a link just to Keyboard Cat on the, because that's usually what happens when I accidentally give someone the wrong link. They get cat videos. All right, this is your welcome to Jamboard. Now, orienting yourself to Jamboard. This is our first board of Jamboard. Now, kind of a prompt up top, right here. And this over here, this white bar with 8 icons is your tool menu. We're gonna make sticky notes, which is the 4th one down. I also may show you how to annotate if we have time. You're gonna make a sticky note, right? And you can change it to whatever color you want. And what I want you to do is tell me something that you can adjust in a previous lesson or use in the future. This is your opportunity to give me some feedback because I'm really excited to run this lesson. Awesome. Good. You guys are making your Post-it notes. And by the way, it's a good example of showing you guys the things that go wrong. If you want to use a Jamboard in your class, seriously, do a couple of test runs because you want to kind of maneuver your way around all these settings. Believe me, something always goes wrong, but everyone's been really good to me. And I feel like I learned every time something goes wrong. Oh my God, we got a bonsai plant. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. I think you brought the plant in. That's very cheerful. And that's your exit ticket, by the way. If you have any questions, feel free to ask because good design has never hurt anyone. Well, I guess if it was a giant billboard and it hit someone in the head when it fell down, that could have been the case. Oh, and look, you guys can, and annotating. This is really fun too. This top one right here, you can add little things. Lately, all the kids have just been drawing Among Us characters. But as a side note, if anyone, so whenever you're trying to draw a line, hold shift, guys, and then you'll get a straight line, by the way. You guys got, let's see, you guys got text cascades, polls, you got a Jamboard, and you got a breakout room. Just so if you guys are remote teaching, those are 4 things in our toolkit. And I'm not kidding. I had this doc that was desaturate colors, don't use green, that I've been keeping. Oh, and I can hit stop record now. Yay! Wow, this has been recording for a good 50 minutes. If anyone has any questions about Loom and how they too can get a circle when they're recording, I'm all about Loom. And Dave Murphy approved it. And we get a Teacher Pro. If you log in, you can get the teacher account for free. Upgrade.
Give it a moment, it could shine. Then it would be a pleasure so drastic. How can you hate a fun that's so fantastic?